Welcome to today's interview here on Brighteon.com. This is a really critical interview with a guest that was incredibly popular when I interviewed him remotely. It's Dr. Michael Nehls, and he's the author of this bombshell book that is a must-read. It's called The Indoctrinated Brain. This is available at booksellers everywhere, and there's also an audiobook version available. This is from Skyhorse Publishing. And Dr. Nehls now joins us in studio. He's made a trip to the United States, and welcome to Texas, Dr. Nehls.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you very much for having me again. Now in person. It was really a pleasure being here.
It's great to have you here. And the interview with you, it really altered my understanding of neurology and also how people's brains and personalities and decision-making has been hijacked and controlled by very dark forces. You want to give us a quick overview of what your book is about, what your work, your research is about?
Yeah. So my background is actually in immunology. I did a PhD work there, discovering by genetic research a molecule that is responsible and required for the adaptive immune system. That's the way we essentially adapt to viruses and be more efficient in fighting them, naturally, of course. And then I turned to another immune system, the mental immune system, which is essentially under attack when we develop Alzheimer's, when we lose our ability to think, to memorize, and many other attributes which are human and important for humans, to be curious and to go new ways and reflect on things. And of course, our ability to memorize everything that we learn. And I also realized very soon that even for thinking, it's required that we are able to memorize. So our whole individuality is dependent on memorization. So I worked very hard on understanding what is necessary that we can memorize things throughout our lives, because Alzheimer's is not a natural development. It's absolutely unnatural and caused by our way of life, our modern way of life.
What, exposure to toxins and inflammatory factors, or what?
Exactly, and also even though we live kind of prosperous in the, let's say, in the global north, we still have a lot of deficiencies. Like, for example, vitamin D, which was actually exploited in 2000 to develop a program that is unheard of. This experimental vaccination program with genetic material was only possible because we have a deficiency in vitamin D. So this deficiency in vitamin D, which I found out is also a cause or a cofactor in developing Alzheimer's. So a level, for example, where Alzheimer's is essentially as low as the likelihood in developing, and the level that we have in Germany, for example, I come from Germany. In the winter, we have like 25 nanomole. In summer, we have an average maybe 40 to 50. But the healthy rate would be 125. That is what we measure in tribes, for example, in Africa, people who live in the wild and live naturally. This is in a natural way of living, not protected from the sun in houses, not protected by sunscreen, not living too far in the north and having no food which supplies the vitamin D. We have a deficiency, and between the 25 we measure in older people on average and the 125, which would be normal, we have a 70% increase of our risk in Alzheimer's.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're covering this. I've been talking about vitamin D for 20 plus years and the chronic deficiency of vitamin D, but especially in North America and across Europe, those with darker skin pigmentation, right? Because they have a natural sunscreen that blocks the production of vitamin D in their skin. And yet, their ancestry, let's say a black American today, their ancestry might be from some country in Africa where they were much closer to the equator. Exactly. They had much higher exposure, and they were generating much more vitamin D. Now they're living indoors. They're working in an office environment, typically, let's say, and nobody's explaining to them why cancer rates are higher among black Americans and why prostate cancer is more aggressive or breast cancer is more aggressive.
Absolutely.
So, but your focus on then the cognition effects that vitamin D deficiency causing
Yeah, absolutely.
Alzheimer's.
It causes Alzheimer's. It's not the cause of Alzheimer's, but it's one factor, one of many factors, and that's just one example of deficiencies that we have in our modern life. But we don't, the law of the minimum applies. Things that are lacking is our problem, but also the law of the maximum applies. If we eat things that are not healthy for us in higher quantities, sugar-containing products, for example, leading to glycation of proteins and even the DNA in our cells. These glycation products lead to an activation of the immune system. We call them advanced glycation end products. The receptor for advanced glycation end products activates the immune system because it's almost like you have a piece of wood in your skin. You know, it's something which shouldn't be there.
Yes.
The immune system tries to attack it, gets not rid of it. We have a chronic inflammation, and chronic inflammation shuts down the relevant part or the relevant function of the autobiographical memory center where Alzheimer's starts.
Wow.
And I actually have a picture of that. Maybe we should look at this.
Yes.
Just to give.
Please bring that up. We'll show that next. But one more comment before we get to that. I recall from our last interview, and I suppose I can only recall it because I don't have the highly inflammatory neurodestructive processes that you've referred to. But I recall that you said that the hippocampus is the one region of the brain where neurogenesis continues to take place at any age.
Exactly.
And I've been thinking about that. There are many things that you said in the interview that really altered my understanding of the world around us. One of them being how easily that globalist forces can hijack human neurology in order to control people and to induce things like fear as a means of control. They're sort of weaponizing our neurology against us. But in all the things that I have experienced in terms of learning at my age, in my mid-50s, like, learning, doing Rubik's Cube solving. I do speed cubing now. I solve the cube. That would not be possible without the hippocampus and neurogenesis, correct?
Well, there are certain physical skills you might be able to learn without it.
No, but I mean, it's cognitive.
Yeah,
right?
I know it's
cognitive. You have to
but just to give an example, there was one famous patient which actually led to the discovery of the autobiographical memory being in the hippocampus. And this patient, HM, was his. While he was living, nobody was allowed to tell what the name really is. So it was all the papers about him are about HM, Henry Molassen. Well, he died later on, almost 50 years later. But he had epilepsy, and it was not treatable anymore. So the surgeon decided to remove this part of the brain where the epilepsy started to commence.
Really?
And but by some reason that nobody understood, he not only removed the part of the brain which caused the epilepsy, he removed on the other side at the identical region. And the region he removed was the hippocampus. Oh. And from that moment on, Henry Molassen couldn't remember anything anymore, nothing novel.
Whoa.
But it reminds me just of the cube that you are showing me. He was taught to play piano, and he learned to play piano. Whenever he
played, at a younger age.
No. When he had no autobiographical memory.
Okay.
And so he learned piano, and but because he couldn't remember that he learned piano, he couldn't remember the event, the episodes when he learned, because we call the autobiographical memory also the episodic memory. He couldn't remember the episodes of learning.
So he had the skill of playing the piano, but no memory of having attained.
So whenever he played, and he was asked, how can you play so well? He said, I'm a genius, I never learned it.
No kidding.
Yeah, but it's just...
Wow. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, your presentation, I know you have some critical slides to go through.
I just want to show maybe, because most people don't know what the hippocampus actually is, and we talked about it, and maybe they have to look it up, but it might be nice to show people.
Okay, yeah, you start. I'm going to solve the cube while you do that. How about that? So you start with the presentation. Let's show his slide there.
It's just
on screen. There we go. Go ahead.
It's just a few slides. So you have to think about it when you look here at this picture. This is the brain, and what you see here are two, let's say, orange-colored structures, which are actually the hippocampus. It's our autobiographical memory center, and without the hippocampus, we couldn't remember anything that we have ever experienced.
Right.
And so all these memories, all our personal experiences, are essentially the basis of our individuality. And this is what the slide shows, and it also shows, of course, why the hippocampus is named hippocampus, because when you actually look at it from an anatomical view, it really looks like a seahorse.
Oh, really?
That's why it's called hippocampus.
Okay.
That's actually the scientific name of seahorses, hippocampus.
Okay.
So anyway, in the hippocampus, and you already mentioned it, and I mentioned it in our last talk, all the functions of the, okay.
There it is. So,
Okay.
okay.
Yeah, now you impressed me now.
Oh, really?
Absolutely. Because I tried it once, and it really, I don't think I solved it. Anyway.
Well, I'm competing against the kids that do it in 10 seconds, though.
Yeah, okay.
Because they have little alien fingers that can just brrr like that.
Yeah.
So I'm never going to beat those kids, but...
Yeah, their brain is like a sponge. But to be honest, these cells that I'm showing here, this is a piece of the hippocampus here.
Yeah.
And this is from animals, which are actually old animals, like 2-year-old mice. They are correspond to an 80-year-old human.
Really?
Mice only get about 2 years old. They are old, really old, and they die of age. So they have a very fast life, so to speak.
So you call those index neurons?
I call them index neurons. These neurons, which you see, the green ones here, these are stained because they have certain features. They are newborn. They are newly born in the adult stage. So you are like 80 years old and you produce still these cells. In humans, it's possible. About 1.5% of all hippocampal cells can be generated new every year.
Really?
And are added to the hippocampus. And you need these cells because otherwise you wouldn't be able to memorize new things without overriding previous experiences. And these nerve cells are required to retrieve the information once you have stored them. So every day you store information in the hippocampus, and you store when you have learned something, what you have learned, where you have learned it, and how it felt. Very important.
The emotional impact.
Without emotion, you wouldn't memorize anything. Emotion is really the key for things to enter the hippocampus and stay there.
So this is why strongly emotional events make a much stronger imprint on the neural network.
That is actually used against us. If you have the fear-mongering, then everything will be memorized.
Right.
And if you memorize it without the presence of index neurons, then you start overriding.
This also, I think, doesn't explain why so much of marketing and advertising is all emotional.
Absolutely,
now, instead of informational. They're not telling you, oh, here's a car, and here's the car's properties, and here's why it's better. Now it's just, you should feel good, and then here's a car.
Exactly. So what you have experienced and the emotion doesn't stay in the hippocampus. Every night it's uploaded into neocortical, let's say, hard drive.
Really?
And only the location and the time stamp of the memory stays in the hippocampus. And this time and the location neurons, the space neurons, the time and the space neurons, they together form an index for the memory that has been uploaded and be retrieved again.
Oh, interesting.
And these time and space neurons, these are the green ones you see here. They are newly born every year, and they essentially are required to memorize when and where we have learned something. So if you block this production, you stop memorizing things, and if you block it for a long term, that's what you see in Alzheimer patients. They suddenly don't know how to get home again from where they have been.
You know, let me ask you something.
They have no feeling anymore for time and space.
I often listen to audiobooks when I'm doing work on my ranch. And I might be driving a tractor, driving a vehicle. And then I hear something in the book. My brain ties it to that location because the next time I come back to that spot, I involuntarily recall what I heard from the book when I was at that same spot. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
Exactly. I remember about 2.5 years ago when I was working on this puzzle, what was happening to us, the world society in the last 4 years, since 2020. And I spent 2 years figuring it out, and I didn't come up with the final idea. And I remember it was almost like yesterday. I stepped out of a shower in a vacation home we had in the Cross Island in the Mediterranean, my wife and I.
Yeah.
Because I came back from a hike, I took a shower, was thinking about this whole issue, what was happening the last 4 years. And I can tell you on which step of the staircase when I went down, I had suddenly the idea how everything fitted together, how to solve the problem, the puzzle actually, how all the puzzle pieces, which individually didn't make any sense, suddenly came together seamless, and I had a complete picture in front of me, and that's what actually led me to write this book.
And so that realization was so emotionally positive for you that it was imprinted.
It was
into your.
It's unbelievable. I mean, every second of the thought process was there, and it's tied emotionally to this staircase in this vacation home. Yeah.
Wow, what an incredible memory.
Yeah.
But there's something else I want to ask you in all of this. I mean, we'll get into more slides, but right now the world is really being entertained by AI, large language model systems. In fact, we're working on an LLM project ourselves too, for alternative knowledge about health and nutrition and so on. But people are so amazed by the neural network in silicon, but they forget about the neural network in here.
Absolutely, yeah.
It's like these companies are willing to spend trillions of dollars. OpenAI has announced a $7 trillion investment, I think, in NVIDIA, microchips and everything. But and then people want to throw money at that, invest in it, but they don't want to invest in their own neural network, which is free. No. It's free, and it's a supercomputer.
Yeah, and the problem is that the AI will learn to think better and better, while our thinking abilities will drop and drop. And the more these AI technologies will take over thinking for us,
exactly,
the less we will be able to do it ourselves.
That's right. People will sort of use the AI systems as their cognitive surrogates.
Yeah. I mean, these are space cells, and they remember when we did something. But if you just travel around with your car and you just use the GPS system and you don't watch anymore for signs and signals and anything, you just follow this screen, you have a completely different experience, and you don't memorize essentially as well as you did decades ago when these systems were not present.
Right.
Where you are and where you have been and how it felt to be there. And we lose a lot with technology. We lose essentially the connection to nature.
Absolutely, yeah. That's why, I force myself to go into nature every single day with my animals.
Yeah, absolutely.
I walk my goats, actually. They love to walk with me, and we go through the forest and everything. But there's another angle of all of this that I want to bring up, which is that in Western medicine, it is a presumption that cognitive decline is a natural function. So they say, it's just old age.
Yeah.
Well, but that's not an explanation.
No, it's totally wrong. I published a paper, peer-reviewed, in 2016. It's called The Unified Theory of Alzheimer's Disease. And there I show that it's the aging is just a prerequisite because it takes decades for the disease to develop. But that doesn't mean it's the cause.
Not the causative factor.
It's not the causative factor. In fact, when Alzheimer's, Allis Alzheimer in 1906 published his paper, he actually identified it as a weird disease. He didn't see something like this before. And I can tell you people aged 70 to 80 years at that time already in large quantities.
Yes.
Sufficient quantities that we should have seen hundreds of thousands of Alzheimer cases if the rates of Alzheimer's have been like today.
Right.
And in fact, in textbooks of 1940, 1945, big textbooks of neuropathology, the Alzheimer's disease was not even mentioned. And today,
that makes sense.
Today it's a leading disease. So,
yes.
So something has changed the last decades, the last 50, 60, 70 years. And I can tell you what happened. We have a decline in the production of exactly these nerve cells. These index neurons are not produced anymore, and they don't protect us anymore if they are not there. And they are our mental health system, essentially.
Wow. So what is interfering with the neurogenesis production of these?
I would come to the answer to this question in a second.
Okay.
I actually have a slide on that.
Okay, please.
But I would like to show you first why they are so important to us. They are not only important for us that we memorize things individually and can separate one information from another one. For example, when we have to think, they are very important that we when we develop a thought, we have many alternative thoughts in our brain. Sometimes they're only slightly different, thought 1 from thought B and thought C when we solve a problem. And we have to decide maybe later on which of the thoughts is the one we want to follow. So it's almost like an evolutionary process. We have all these ideas, they pop up in our brain. We have to memorize these popped up ideas instantaneously and long term. And the only part of our brain that can do this is our autobiographical memory center. Only the hippocampus can do that. So we wouldn't be able to develop any idea, any plan, we wouldn't be able to process and evolve any constructive model of anything if we hadn't had these cells.
But that brings up a really important point, since these cells are being suppressed. And many of us notice across society that people are suffering personality changes, they're losing rationality. I have seen people who have lost job skills. And I believe it's related to these injections, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'll come to that in a second.
Oh, okay.
Actually show
I'm getting ahead of. I'm sorry.
No, you don't have to be sorry. It's really important. But what also important is this happened already many, many years before. It started already decades before. Because, as I would show you maybe in this Please, slide here, the function of these index neurons, these new nerve cells that are produced every day, is not only memorizing our own thoughts or anything that we experience. They also have another function. They are the neuronal correlate of psychological resilience. And that's very
mental
important.
Health.
Yeah, that we are resilient to stress, stressful events. If they are not produced, resilience goes down, which means that every life event that might make us anxious, that is maybe difficult to comprehend, would lead to depression. So if we shut down the production of these cells, at the same time, depression rates go up.
Wow.
And to tell you, in 2017 was the highest recorded depression rate on Earth ever. 2017 already. In 2019, the World Health Organization said in a paper, now depression is the #1 disease worldwide.
Really?
That means if you reverse the argument, in 2019, in summer, we had the lowest production rate of index neurons in the hippocampus. Another thing that these cells do, they are the neuronal correlate of curiosity. If you shut down their production, animals stop being curious. They don't seek novelty anymore. They just sit around and run in circles, but they don't move around and roam around and check out their environment, which would be important for their survival.
Yes.
They wouldn't do that anymore.
But we see this in humans now. There's no curiosity. They watch the Super Bowl, basically. But there's no curiosity. Even journalists aren't curious about asking questions anymore. There's no curiosity.
But to be curious, you also have to have psychological resilience. Because when you are curious, you enter new space, new areas, and you might not like what you are seeing. So if you don't, so you have to be prepared for that. You have to accept that the new information might be stressful. So we need psychological resilience to be curious.
Oh, this explains censorship. They don't want to be exposed to any new information that might cause psychological stress.
No, I think they want to stress us, but they have some other idea behind that, and I'll come to that in a second.
Okay, but I mean like the safe spaces of the political left.
Oh, I see.
They want to have a safe space where they have no information that contradicts their current belief system. And in order to do that, they have to censor all other voices that might challenge that.
Yeah, it's difficult to accept different opinions if you have no resilience.
Right.
Yeah.
And then they say they're triggered. Everybody's triggered now, triggered by the slightest thing.
Yeah. So the slightest thing that is worrisome could cause depression because you have no resilience. Actually, every antidepressant that is on this planet right now and distributed to people, every antidepressant has only one function, essentially, that is activating adult hippocampal neurogenesis.
Interesting.
So if you block adult hippocampal neurogenesis in an animal by chemicals, by radiation, by whatever, genetically, then no antidepressant would work anymore.
Oh, interesting.
It's just
so the serotonin reuptake inhibition
would not work anymore.
But it affects.
Serotonin is essentially a growth factor for neurogenesis.
Got it.
And activate.
So when they keep more serotonin concentrations flooded in the brain, then it allows these cells to develop more.
Yeah, you have a higher production rate.
But then Why is it that, like when I grew up, we were all very resilient. We were outdoor kids. We didn't get triggered by anything. And that trait has stuck with people like myself and perhaps you as well, and the people that we know. But then there's another segment of society that has lost the ability, apparently, to generate these cells. What's going on?
Yeah, I come to that in a second.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
I just want to maybe finish very quickly what all the functions are of these cells.
Okay, go
Because
go
once
for
you
it.
understand that, you will understand the consequences of that much more deeply.
Okay.
So the other thing that, of course, is that if you are curious, you make new experiences. And if you are making new experiences, if you're not doing the same thing all over again every day, then you increase your individuality. And the broader your individuality is, the more your personality has personal experiences, the more creative you can be.
Yes.
Okay? And the last thing that I discovered, I just I'm in the process, hopefully, to publish a paper. It's in the peer review process right now. In 2002, there was a Nobel Prize in what is called economics, given to a psychologist, Daniel Kahneman. And he discovered that we have two thinking systems, a very fast one, which acts more or less stereotypically, just doing repetitive what we always do, essentially also working with, I would say, a behavior that is almost like genetic, like instinct.
Yes.
You know, for example, if you have no resilience, there comes something fearful, your instinct tells you, go to the group.
Right.
Find
So
shelter
these are like
in the
cognitive
nest.
shortcuts
Yeah.
that mostly get the right answer quickly because you might have to make a decision quickly.
Exactly, but you are not thinking about it.
Right.
It's more like a reflex.
Right.
And but there's another system. It's called System 2, which requires energy and is real thinking. And for this distinction, he got the Nobel Prize for this discovery, because in certain situations it's better to think.
Yeah. Right.
And
Like you're creating economic policy.
But the point is, the System 1 is always active. It's a default. That's how we work by default. System 2 has to be activated by gut feeling. You have to have a gut feeling, an emotional sensation. You need to activate your thinking process. But the reason why it's not always active, the thinking process, is because it requires energy, mental energy.
Yes.
And it was unclear until recently what this mental energy is. And I'm just in the process, I've just submitted a paper where I show that these cells are the source of the mental energy.
See, that's interesting also because, you know, in evolutionary biology, the energy efficiency of the organism is strongly tied to its survival capabilities. Even though the human mind is an all-purpose computational system, it still requires a very high proportion of caloric energy in order to function compared to other animals that have simpler brains.
20% of our metabolic energy goes into the brain.
So if you're running your brain at 100% all the time...
Well, I think our brain is adapted to this 20% because it was always 20%.
Right.
And it was actually shown that it doesn't matter if you think or if you don't think, the mental energy that you use up is not much different.
Oh, the caloric energy is about the same?
Different. Actually, it was a mistake up to about 10 years ago that people thought the mental energy required for System 2 function, that means for thinking, is actually metabolic.
But it's not?
It's not.
Oh, okay. Because I was thinking that too.
I was thinking that too for a long time, but it was shown, and I show it in my paper, and I'll also show it in this book actually here, in the indoctrinated brain. It's something else. What you need to be able to put your thoughts, if you invest in thinking, every detail of your thought process needs to be stored. And only the autobiographical memory can do that. So, but if you're running out of index neurons, then the thinking process would start overriding previous experiences. And the brain tries to avoid that.
And then the person would say, it's just too hard to think that.
Yeah.
To go through that.
The technical term is ego depletion. And you might notice that. I notice it every day. I work hard mentally the whole day. I have a lot of System 2 activity during the day. Writing a book is System 2. Exploring new scientific ideas is System 2. Even social activities are System 2.
Right.
And after a few hours, well, my index neurons are used up. I feel that. And I start to be what we call ego depleted. And this ego division is my signal to go to bed and sleep. And while I'm sleeping,
then during sleep,
the source, essentially the energy source, the number of new index neurons starts to grow, and their number is essentially my new energy that I have for the
next day. Wow,
and that's my theory, and I'm just hopefully being able to publish it.
That is really fascinating.
So here I put it already in there as if it were essentially a proven task. But it's the mental source to think.
Okay.
So if you shut down this, what I call here, this mental immune system, all these functions together are our mental immune system. So if you want to attack people and shut down their ability to resist what you want from them, you have to essentially only do one thing: shut down the production of these nerve cells. And
that's interesting.
That's the target.
Let me translate this to pop culture,
please.
And let me ask my producer. You remember in Star Wars they were trying to explain the Force, like how the Jedi has the Force, and I think in one of the later movies they came up with something. They introduced the concept of, I think they called them midi-chlorians. It was supposed to be some kind of substance that Jedi had that would give them Jedi powers. I think. Am I right? Oh, I can't hear my producer. I don't have my earpiece. I think they call it midi-chlorians.
Okay.
And it was just a made-up substance that gave you Jedi powers. And if you lost your midi-chlorians, you couldn't be a Jedi anymore. But you're saying that the neurogenesis of these index neurons gives you sort of these
powers.
Yeah. I was almost wanting to call them superpowers, because it is pretty impressive.
It's a superpower. It's the superpower which made us the dominating species on this planet.
Exactly.
Because we need our autobiographical memory, for example, to judge, to learn what other people want, how they behave, how we have to interact. We have to use we need system 2 to find out in a socially conflicting situation how to act best, not to be killed,
right?
Maybe, So all our social skills are based on this mental immune system.
What part?
Sorry.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt, but I'm just so curious. Well, no, of course I am, but
it's fun.
What part of the brain does the simulates the world? Because I'm good at this, doing physics simulations in the brain to consider, like, if I do this, these things are going to happen, or if this happens, this is going to happen. Surely there's like a simulation.
That's the hippocampus.
That's the hippocampus.
Yeah, because it's not only let's say, an image of the real space and time.
Yeah.
So the hippocampus ties all our memories, everything that we have experienced in the space-time continuum. Yeah, the four-dimensional space-time continuum essentially is represented by these index neurons.
Okay.
Yeah, the space and the time neurons.
Okay.
So it's space and time, and everything that happens in space and time. But even future events, plans, things that we plan, are essentially memorized by new index neurons. These are virtual space and time neurons of future events. And when we try to execute this future event, if we try to follow a plan, then these future space and time neurons become more and more active because we are closer to the goal.
Wow.
Yeah.
What about when dreaming? Because when you're dreaming, your brain is creating a simulated environment, including other characters and their dialogue, and it is projecting onto them their thinking, even though they're not real, but even the physics of the world, everything, waterfalls, whatever. I mean, think about the complexity of how the brain has to generate this simulated world.
Yeah, and make it conscious.
And bring it into your consciousness.
Yeah, and even if we dream, it's there. It's actually quite interesting. We remember a dream when we wake up during a dream. Otherwise, we wouldn't remember.
So lucid dreaming.
Any dream. If you have a nightmare and you wake up, that's usually why dreams are usually not very happy dreams. Because the nightmare would maybe wake you up because it's not unbearable for you what you experience.
And you're saying in that moment it's still in your consciousness, and that's how you remember it.
It's still in your consciousness, but it's also that the hippocampus wakes up and the index neurons start to memorize the last part of the dream.
Okay.
That's why you always remember the end of the dream, but never the beginning.
Interesting. Well, what about one time I woke up, this happened once in my life that I remember many years ago. I woke up and couldn't remember who I was. It's like all those neurons were frozen for a moment or something. Like I did not know my identity or anything for a few seconds. And it was a terrifying moment, by the way. And then everything came flooding back, all my memories of who I am.
It's almost like you boot a computer.
It's like a reboot, yeah.
It's like a reboot. I do this actually every morning. I mean, I'm doing it consciously meanwhile because I know how it works. And so it's essentially, I have to remember myself again. So if you think about it, the index neuron production is so essential for our mental health, mental immune system, our way to interact with others. You can really compare it. I mean, the name immune system might be interesting to explain. We have essentially two immune systems. We have one for microorganisms. That's our physical immune system, consisting of the multitude of our immune cells. And then we have, and it's against microorganisms. But in the macro world, it's not the microorganisms that actually bother us. It's usually macroorganisms. And as you can imagine, they come usually on two legs.
And they play mind games with this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And the only way to counter their attacks against us is essentially that we engage in thinking and be socially active. And it would go even a step further. It's not only the mental immune system of a single person, since personality and curiosity and individuality is every human being is almost like an immune cell in itself. So these cells in each human create individuality, and all the individuals together have essentially a social immune system against social attacks against the society.
Well, no wonder thinking is under attack and individuality is under attack.
If you want to dominate a society, you have to attack the index neuron production in each individual.
Wow. So is that what, fluoride in the water supply? Is that one of the things that suppresses it, or what? I mean,
yeah, they actually inject stuff in the meanwhile that suppresses it, and I'll come to that in a second.
Okay. But I just want to make a note here that what you're talking about, which I think is really profound, is that the battle space of our world right now is cognitive.
Yeah, it's happening here. It's happening in the hippocampus.
In the hippocampus. That's where the warfare is taking place.
Is essentially the target of the war. This is where the war takes place.
Because, and this is why I would guess that we see, like in the wars that we're having right now, we're seeing around the world, the governments are no matter which side, are pushing out just propaganda and lies constantly. There's no real information, but it's all being pushed through controlled narratives and through media that's designed to say to you, don't think for yourself.
Yeah.
Don't question anything. You're not an authoritative source. Here are the authoritative sources. You should trust them and believe them no matter what, which means don't think for yourself.
Yeah. It's even worse. And come to that in a second. Okay. It's really even worse than that.
Okay.
And why this is happening, why they need to check that only a certain amount of information, a certain level of information is actually coming through.
Wow.
It's about installing essentially a new operating system in our brains, and this operating system shouldn't be interfered by either previous knowledge or by alternative views.
Okay.
So if you want to install if you want to modify the brain and you want to have people with a certain modified brain, then you need to control what goes into this brain.
Yes.
I think it's obvious.
And that's where it's narrative control and censorship of alternative views, and you can't question the science, etc.
Exactly. And we discussed already that, I mentioned already, this happened already years before. It started years before. If the psychological resilience is down, we have a high likelihood of developing a depression. It's not a depression per se, but we cannot cope with life events and so good. And if we don't cope with them well, then depression is more likely. So depression is essentially a clinical marker for a reduction or a blocked neurogenesis. So it's almost like in a reverse relationship. And it's causal.
This is why I never suffer from depression. I guess I just...
You wouldn't.
I've been blessed with like really good neurogenesis or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, even if something really bad happens to you, I mean, are things that could really put everybody maybe in a depression.
Yeah.
But it's more likely that you maybe come out of it somehow.
I would joke about it, is what I would do.
No, I mean, many things happen in my life which I don't like,
Yeah.
I mean, a grandchild of mine was just born in the summer and lived only for 5 minutes. I mean, it was a really traumatic life event for the whole family. But,
Yes.
but I think we all had some kind of resilience still. We suffered, no question, but I think we all learned something out of it. We came stronger out of it as a family.
And that gets back to the resilience that you're talking about.
That's the resilience we need. And I show you actually why there's a compound out there, an essential compound, which actually was shown to help when you lose a family member to get over it better, not falling into depression more likely, when you just take this compound. And it's a natural essential compound. And come to that. I will remember, my autobiographical memory will remember when we come to that. But I won't step
I want to know about that
because
compound. But I can't help but ask another quick question. Why is it that there are very high IQ people out there who are also extremely gullible?
Mm-hmm. So the IQ is essentially measured by the number of things you can juggle in your short-term memory at the same time. And this takes place, according to modern theory, in the frontal brain. And so we can have a high IQ even without an hippocampus. I mentioned already Henry Molassen.
Yes.
He did, without a hippocampus, he was IQ tested, and his IQ was 112 like before.
Interesting.
So he didn't lose any IQ. So IQ and system 2 thinking has nothing to do with it.
Interesting.
So even though maybe if you engage system 2 and start thinking, a high IQ will be helpful, no matter what. But it doesn't mean that you engage system 2 if you don't have it, or if you're not willing to do that.
Okay.
So thinking is possible, but not necessary for you to survive in our society. And most people with a high IQ maybe have maybe go to physics or whatever, study something. But then at a certain point in life, maybe their work becomes routine on a high level, of course.
Yes.
But it's not that they are curious about things, and they might have not the resilience they need to engage in real thinking, which might be controversial when it's necessary.
Got it.
Anyway, if you look at the growth of new nerve cells here and the growth of 1.5%, we should expect the growth of the hippocampus on our whole life.
Okay.
So that would be the curve here, which I show in this graphic. This is the hippocampus volume, actually the hippocampal volume of both hippocampi. When you are born, you have about 3 cubic centimeters, so 1.5, 1.5. Then you have a steep growth rate during up to adulthood. And then you have a 1 to 2% growth rate the rest of your life. That would be natural.
Okay.
But if you look at gene bank data for, let's say, 20,000 Brits, British people, which was done in 2019, that's the growth rate. It's actually a shrinkage rate.
Wait, how was this determined?
They looked essentially at the hippocampal volume at every age.
Yeah.
And you see that at every age group, instead of having a bigger hippocampus with growing age, becoming smaller.
I mean, they're actually losing.
Yeah, we're losing 1.1%
brain mass.
Instead of winning 1.5% of brain volume in the hippocampus.
Yeah.
We lose about 1.4%.
And that was British citizens?
Yeah, but there are studies all over the world. It's just a very comprehensive study. That's why I use the data.
Is that why the British military, nothing works? The missiles don't launch and the propellers don't turn on the aircraft carriers?
I don't think we should maybe...
you can put that one on me.
Yeah,
that's my comment. That's me making a joke.
Yeah,
okay.
It's a funny joke, but to be perfectly honest, I think this is what we would see in every nation, because the reason for that is our lifestyle, and this doesn't differ too much from one country to the other.
Right. No, I would agree. In fact, I would almost hate to see that chart for Americans, because I live here, I see what's happening. There's a cognitive decline.
Deficits which cause hippocampal shrinkage, which are even more severe in Americans than, for example, in Germans.
Oh yeah.
For example, the omega-3 index.
The what?
The omega-3 index. That's the amount of omega-3 fatty acids required for hippocampal growth. And you can measure them in the blood.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I'm talking about omega-3, I'm not talking about what you find in canola,
Right. No, you're saying like an omega-3 deficiency.
The omega-3 fatty acids, which I'm talking about, are the ones you find, for example, in fish.
Yes.
EPA and DHA. And these two you can be measured.
Yes.
And the percentage in the cell membrane of erythrocytes compared to all other fatty acids is the index. Okay. And for example, the placenta in humans tries to produce about an index of 11% for the child that is growing in the womb. 11% is the ideal. With 11%, you have the highest hippocampal volume.
Oh, no kidding.
2% is not acceptable for life. It's not. You cannot live below 2%. Germans have allowed 4.5% on average, not 11, 4.5, and Americans are actually by 4%. And
because we eat a lot of canola oil. I mean, not me, but I mean,
canola oil is that's some of the problems that the industry tells us. Yeah, you just eat canola oil. There's omega-3 because omega-3 is important. But the problem is humans cannot transform omega-3 from canola oil into DHA.
Oh, interesting.
It's impossible. Well, I mean, it's possible, but the percentage is below 1%.
Plus, we know the seed oils tend to be really inflammatory to the circulatory system as well, not just neurology. Yeah.
Absolutely. No, okay. Anyway, just the consequences of
this is frightening, this chart.
The consequence of that is, of course, and this is only the tip of the iceberg, we have chronic exhaustion in society.
Yeah.
We have people are ego depleted already when they wake up in the morning.
Oh, my.
Because the production is not going on overnight, we have major depression as the #1 disease now in 2019. And Alzheimer's disease is now number 3 or number 4 worldwide as the cause of death. Yeah.
That's wild.
And Alzheimer's is a consequence of a decade long, of several decades of suppressed neurogenesis.
Okay.
That's why it's a disease of the higher age. Because it takes a few decades before the hippocampus is shrunken too much. Actually, the size of the hippocampus, the smaller it is, the closer you're to Alzheimer's.
Is that right?
Actually, the size of the hippocampus is a biomarker for the progression of Alzheimer's.
How many cubic centimeters is the hippocampus normally?
Yeah, it's about 5. You see here in the curve, it's about 10 cubic centimeters for both of them. So about 5 to 5.5.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. Wow, such a small mass responsible for such a big...
it's just a thumb essentially sticking here. Right. That's why you have to upload every evening. It's almost like this UPS stick, USB stick, USB stick, where you can only memorize that you have uploaded something, but you cannot memorize the content that you uploaded without having a problem to memorize new things the next day.
Wow.
So the upload is very necessary. Now, this looks very esoteric, this chart here. But essentially, it shows all the areas in our life that are responsible for the growth of the hippocampus.
Interesting.
Every area, we need a purpose in life. Without a purpose in life, we wouldn't memorize new things. We wouldn't explore new things. We wouldn't be waking up in the morning and doing something novel. We need something that pushes us, a purpose. And when you have a purpose in life, then you give food, essentially, memories to these new index neurons, and they survive. We need social life, social activity. And when you are socially engaged, even if you look in the eyes of your dog, it was measured that the oxytocin level goes up in your brain, but also in the dog's brain. Oxytocin is the most potent activator of neurogenesis that we know of.
Is that right?
That means if you shut down social interaction, you reduce the oxytocin level, and the hippocampus will shrink.
Isn't that the hormone between mother and child also?
Absolutely.
Among sheep and cattle and everything?
Oxytocin is the hormone that actually activates the birth process.
And so it spurs neurogenesis in the new offspring.
Yeah, it's very important, but it's particularly in humans. You have to think about it. The child that is born has no survival potential at all if the mother wouldn't care for it.
Right.
But the love of the mother to the child, the bonding requires memory.
Yes.
And the more the mother memorizes from these moments, the longer and more deeply is the bonding. And the stronger is the bonding. And that's why oxytocin is so important. It has this dual role. At one time, one function is to activate the birth process, the contraction of the uterus. At the other side, you have this activation of the memory center by producing more neurons that will make a lifelong bonding between the mother and the child. That's
and this is experienced by the mother as love for the child.
Absolutely.
A strong desire to protect my child, even though
it's the same when you
don't rationally know why.
When you bond with pairs come together, men, women, or whatever.
Yeah.
You know, nowadays it's more. Yeah, everything is possible. But the point is, if you meet people and you connect very closely, oxytocin is the bonding hormone, and every bonding relies on memory. I mean, you can't bond to anybody you can't remember.
Right.
Obviously.
I wish we could selectively, though, like forget certain people.
Yeah.
Like, no, but I'm
kind of an anti-bonding.
Another joke, but it's all. Even the traumatic memories are really critical for our formation of who we are and our experience.
Absolutely.
If we were to try to delete every bad thing that happened in our lives, we would probably make those same mistakes again.
Yeah.
And we would not be who we are.
Wouldn't be a good thing.
Yeah.
No, it wouldn't.
That's right.
And this dual purpose function of hormones you see in the whole charts here. For example, when you sleep, melatonin is responsible for deep sleep. At the same time, melatonin is anti-inflammatory and activates neurogenesis during sleep.
Interesting. It also fights COVID, by the way.
Yeah.
You've seen that.
Yeah,
that's interesting.
I believe that.
Yeah.
And look at physical activity. In former ages, in the Stone Age, when you had to go out to survive, and when you go out and you go hunting or fishing and gathering or food, you have to remember where you have identified something. Where was a danger? Where was something you could eat? And so it's clear that physical activity needs to signal to the brain, produce more nerve cells. You know how it works very easily. When you're physically active, you become stronger physically.
Yeah.
Your body produces a growth hormone, erythropoietin, many hormones. Over a dozen I have identified, which are produced, which make us physically stronger. At the same time, each one of them activates neurogenesis.
Interesting.
So again, dual function. So if you don't allow people to move around, you shut down essentially this hormonal production.
And that's what happened during the lockdowns, the COVID lockdowns.
If
you make
you couldn't even go to the gym
miserably. Yeah, absolutely.
They were blocking people from exercising. It was crazy.
So make it very quick. Okay. This is the perfect human life. Okay. This is, you have adults, the grandparents that care for their kids, for the grandchildren. You have enough sleep as a child. You play with others. You go out in the sun. You jog. You do sport. Whatever. You go walking around. You get your vitamin D. You bond to your kids. You have social activity here. Even stretching each other's back, like these pavians. I think pavians are doing. Yeah. That physical contact activates the oxytocin. Of course, we need food. All kinds of different food. And so this is how it should be, and I want to make it short. This is when the hippocampus is happy. That's why it's green.
Okay.
And this is reality, more or less. It looks total. That's how our modern life.
now it's like
that's our modern life. We don't eat enough fish, of course.
Bad food, processed food, isolated
people.
Yeah.
Nothing to do.
Sedentary lifestyles.
Yeah, no sense, no purpose in life, and when you're older. In school, your kids are woken up at a time when they should sleep. To be conformed with our modern industrial life, and so forth. Or we do multitasking, which is another bad thing. Anyway, this is the cause of shrinkage. And then, of course, we get chronic exhaustion and Alzheimer's. And this was already happening before 2020. In 2019, a study was done, and it's really an interesting study. It was published in the New England Journal of Medicine. And it shows you how quickly the hippocampus can shrink. There were 8 people sent to Antarctica for an expedition.
Okay.
Researchers.
Yeah.
But they measured the hippocampal volume and different areas of the hippocampus and compared it to a group of 8 people who stayed at home. And after 14 months, they did another measurement. And the shrinkage rate was dramatic.
Really? Just because of a lack of stimulation, because they were in an isolated indoor environment.
And the front part, you see here in red are different areas of the hippocampus. In blue is the hippocampus, the same area of the control group. You see the shrinkage rate. What I circled here is the frontal part of the hippocampus.
And what is that, minus 10% almost?
Yeah, it's about 7% absolute and even more relative.
Oh, wow.
And what's shrinking here is, the region that is shrunk here after 14 months is the area where the adult hippocampal neurogenesis takes place.
Huh.
A total shrinkage.
Huh.
And the researcher who actually did all this work said, for the hippocampal shrinkage, two major factors seem to play an important role. The first is social isolation. The second is monotony.
Wow.
Okay, and that was 3 months before the lockdown. And interestingly, he gave an interview a few weeks later. And here he said was something very funny. He said, with prison inmates in solitary confinement, I'm pretty sure we'd see the same thing. We'd see something similar. Okay, 3 months later, we were all in solitary confinement, more or less.
Uh-huh.
And
which would have the same effect.
Which would have the same effect.
So by locking us down, the powers that be were able to zap people's individuality, creativity, cognition, memories, the ability to reason and navigate the world around them.
Exactly. And that was 2020, the lockdowns and all these things. But our way out of the lockdowns was, the godly sent, injection program. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. This, what I call the spiking program. And if you look if you see this in context, I will show you now, and I will also show you this small molecule, this essential nutrient that will be very helpful to solve the problem.
Okay.
And I'll show this now in the next slide, and takes me a few minutes, but I think it will be
I want to hear about this, yeah.
So, the first thing that here what you can see is all the time we were fear-mongered, we were killing our parents, kids were killing their grandparents if they don't obey the rules, rules, and it was always devastating what would happen if we don't follow the rules. And so we had what we experienced is what we call pre-traumatic stress. There was actually a paper published by the Gates Foundation, a research paper, showing that if you do fear-mongering, you produce the same effects like if you had experienced the traumatic event in real life.
Wow.
When you experience a traumatic event, you develop what we call a post-traumatic stress syndrome. And the hallmark of a post-traumatic stress syndrome, besides strong depression, is the shrinkage of the hippocampus. It's a hallmark. You have a very, very small hippocampus when you suffer post-traumatic stress syndrome. And what the paper showed by the Gates Foundation, if you do fear-mongering, the same thing will happen. They called it pre-traumatic stress syndrome.
And they probably called it a feature.
Yeah.
Like the mission accomplished.
And how it happens and how it works, I show here. How you actually can do, how fear-mongering leads to a shrinking hippocampus. And it works like this. The pre-traumatic neurotoxic stress in response to fear narratives leads to the leakage of molecules from the neurons into the extracellular space. And what's leaking here are molecules which shouldn't be outside of the neurons, and they are recognized by receptors, immune cell receptors, as a signal that the cells are damaged. It's obvious, Even you have something outside of a cell which shouldn't be there,
right.
Okay, the cell must be damaged.
Okay.
And it's a danger receptor that recognizes it. And the leaked molecules, there are several different ones, heat shock proteins, high mobility group molecules, which are used to control how the DNA is folded and so forth.
Okay.
So molecules which shouldn't be outside. Anyway, these molecules are outside and are called DAMPs, danger-associated molecular patterns. And they are recognized by a receptor which is called TLR4. This receptor here is on an immune cell, which I show here, in the brain, which is called microglia. So there are stationary immune cells in the brain which are essentially checking the brain that there is no toxin coming in, that there is no bacteria coming in, no virus coming in, that if there's a damage to the brain, activating the immune system to fight the damage or to fight the pathogens. Okay, so when TLR4 is activated by neurotoxic stress, it leads to a cascade of events that ends in the nucleus of the cell, and it activates the transcription of pro-inflammatory cytokines.
No kidding.
And the pro-inflammatory cytokines that are produced, like interleukin-1 beta, interleukin-6, TNF-alpha, and many, many others, it's a long list, they all are known to be potent inactivators, blockers of neurogenesis in the hippocampus.
So this is a cytokine storm in the brain.
It's a cytokine storm. It's actually the same cytokines that are produced by the spike protein in the body when you are not having sufficient quantities of vitamin D in your blood.
But this can be induced only through fear.
Not
fear-mongering.
only. I come to another point where
I mean, this, like, fear alone can induce this.
Exactly.
Now, of course, there are also foods and there are chemicals and toxins, but fear alone, which is really tricking the person into poisoning their own brain.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. This is happening, and when you know now from the functions of the adult hippocampal neurogenesis, if you block it, then in this situation, your psychological resilience drops. So you have reduced psychological resilience. And when you have reduced psychological resilience and the fear-mongering continues, this process becomes even worse. It's a cycle, a vicious cycle of neuroinflammation that you are entering now. And this is the major cause of chronic exhaustion, depression, and Alzheimer's. So I predicted in 2020, and I published a book on that we will get an increase. It's called the exhausted brain. It will be hopefully translated in English soon. But you will find everything in the indoctrinated brain in short summary, so to speak. But I predicted in 2020, based on the things that are done to us as a society, and in response to the fear-mongering, that we will get an increase in depression rates. And actually, there are papers out there, one was published in Lancet, which showed that compared to 2019, you remember, highest rate of depression ever recorded, to 2020, we had an increase of threefold. In
Threefold?
Threefold. So we had a dramatic increase in depression from a high level already, and this is the cause. This is the cause. This vicious cycle was essentially exacerbated. It was like, massively activated and pushed.
But are you saying that you think this is from all of the fear that was associated with the pandemic?
Not only the fear. I mean, you remember the slide I showed you with all the areas.
Yeah. The isolation and everything.
The isolation took part, which dropped the production of neurogenesis. We didn't get enough physical exercise. The food changed dramatically. People didn't eat well anymore. Then the purpose of life of many people disintegrated, Of
social interaction. You could only hug your family members through a piece of plastic. Remember that? Yeah. People did that.
It's so weird. Now and then, of course, the purpose in life. I mean, many people had to shut down their businesses. And there was no clear indication that there's hope that they can start again in any time soon.
Right.
So all these things together, sleep essentially quality dropped dramatically when every evening you hear in the prime news what's going on in the world, how bad it is, even though it was never that bad as it was, told.
But let me ask you this: you talked about how the hippocampus can shrink quite rapidly with lack of stimulation in the areas that you mentioned. What about the reverse? How quickly can you regrow the hippocampus?
It actually works quite well. I've seen a paper by Bredesen, for example. He's a researcher on I don't know his first name. Is it Alan? I'm not very good in names. Actually, names is not a hippocampal function.
Is that right?
Yeah, names usually, if they don't come with a lot of emotion, then you don't learn them. And
well, we could curse at the person. You're thinking maybe we could tie emotion to it or something.
Yeah, I mean, if you learn to know somebody who you find either very dangerous or very nice, then you most likely remember the name. But if it's more neutral, then there's not a.
We could add like a layer of Tourette's syndrome every time you want to remember somebody's name. You just tell them to go F themselves, and then you would have a strong emotional event. Yeah, right.
Yeah,
and then there's the answer.
Yeah. Maybe I should ask people when I meet them the first time to punch me in the face.
Yeah, like slap me or something. Yeah, then I'll remember you. Yeah. Okay, we're kidding around.
As long as not everybody's doing it, then it becomes confusing again. You know?
Not true. Yeah, you would have to. Not enough signal to noise ratio right there.
Each one gets
or a slap to noise ratio. We would call that. Yeah.
Anyway, many things happened. The fear mongering was part of that, and of course was when I had a susceptible community to begin with. You know, in 2019. With a low production rate and a shrinking hippocampus, and this was aggravated dramatically. And then this was 2020, but it was a situation 2020. And the only way out of this whole conundrum, of this whole problem, was get this injection. Yeah. That was your way out.
Right.
But it was, I don't know how to say this in English well, but it's like in Germany would say you essentially get rid of the devil and you get the Beelzebub. You know the
other rendition of the demon.
Yeah, exactly.
But how would you say that in German? I love to hear other languages.
Yeah, you essentially get
No, how would you say it in German? Really?
So now I have to switch to German. That's actually difficult right now. Den Teufel mit dem Beelzebub austreiben heißt das.
Oh, wow.
Also you essentially use the Beelzebub to get rid of the devil.
Okay.
Yeah, which essentially changes nothing.
Sometimes in English we say out of the frying pan and into the fire. You traded one emergency for another.
Exactly, and that's exactly what's happening here now, and I show it now in the next moment.
Oh, okay.
So what's happening now is you get only rid of this whole fear-mongering process. You get rid of the COVID pandemic if you get this injection.
Right.
Okay, so you get this injection, and here we have the spike mRNA injected in your in your body, and you produce a lot of spike protein. The spike protein, as we know, has been modified. It has a furin cleavage site, and of course it wasn't the virus for whatever reason. They left it.
Gain of function.
Yeah, gain of function. And funnily, even though it's from the immunological point of view not really necessary, they left the furin cleavage site in the spike mRNA, so that now this dangerous furin cleavage site, which allows the body to not only produce spike, but to cleave it and release the S1 subunit, it was left there.
It was engineered into it.
Yeah, but they could have removed it. I mean, they always told us, well, it was gain of function research, of course, and it's necessary as long as it's in the lab, it's not dangerous. Then this virus, stepped out on purpose or by accident or whatever. But when they started with the injection program, they had many decisions to make. They could have made the decision, for example, not to use a spike protein as an immunogen. They could have used something else.
Sure.
They could have used something else than mRNA. They could just produce the protein, nucleocapsid, for example. Inhalation, ready, finished. But they used the spike protein, they used the mRNA, and they left the furin cleavage site intact, which they shouldn't have. But they left it intact. And what happens now? The spike subunit, the S1 subunit, is able to enter the brain. It is able to cross the blood-brain barrier. And it was shown it does very efficiently.
Yes.
And now you have the spike protein S1 subunit in the brain. Okay.
Oh boy.
And the spike subunit is called a PAMP in accordance to the DAMPs. It's a pathogen-associated molecular pattern. Actually, the TLR4 here shown recognizes the S1 subunit very efficiently. Actually, it is born with the ability to recognize. We are all born with the ability to recognize the S1 subunit. And also animals like mice, rodents are born with this ability. So in a sense, that means the same receptor in rodents and in humans recognize S1 subunit because coronaviruses were already around when we had the common ancestor of rodents and humans, like 100 million years ago.
Yeah.
So they are there forever, and our immune system doesn't have to adapt to it anymore. It has already learned hundreds of millions of years ago, maybe, that the S1 subunit is dangerous and should be recognized. And this danger receptor, TLR4, recognizes the S1 subunit and activates the same program.
Wow.
And by activating this program, it shuts down neurogenesis. Again, so we are not saved in 2021. We exchange one evil with the other.
And since people's bodies continue to manufacture the spike protein with the furin cleavage site, like you said, then your body has been programmed to be a weapon against your own neurology.
Absolutely. And what the term is not depression and Alzheimer's, of course, are also a cause of that. But the real term nowadays used is spikopathy or brain fog. So when we talk about post-vac in the brain or long COVID after infection, it's nothing else than the S1 subunit activating TLR4.
In addition to all the other effects, myocarditis and things like that.
That's outside the brain.
Right,
Many other,
outside the brain.
Yeah, of course, there are also different effects in the brain, like autoimmune diseases and increase of Alzheimer's incidence. And also, for example, Alzheimer's in 2021, we had an increase compared to 2018 in Germany of Alzheimer's, new cases of Alzheimer's by 31%.
Wow.
And usually the cutoff age that I learned in med school for Alzheimer's is 65. Besides the 31% increase, we had 100,000 new cases. That's 1/3 of all the cases below the age of 65. That means we had a dramatic acceleration of Alzheimer's. Because Alzheimer's is not caused by age, it's caused by this disease process. So if this disease process is aggravated, we get an acceleration of the Alzheimer's process, meaning people get Alzheimer's younger and will die younger.
But this is also why Big Pharma is celebrating all the future revenues from Alzheimer's drugs.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
So the same companies create the spike protein jabs. They know it's going to cause a whole generation of Alzheimer's, early on Alzheimer's. And then they're going to profit from that too, because they can keep people alive biologically.
I would say it's a win-win situation, isn't it?
For them, yeah.
It's a win-win situation.
So what's this compound that helps?
The natural compound, the natural inhibitor of GSK3 beta, you see GSK3 beta is activated by TLR4, which then activates NF-kappa B and so forth. So this is a signal molecule. It signals from the cell surface, TLR4, to the nucleus.
Okay. GSK3, yeah,
That's actually GSK3 beta in the brain. And GSK3 or GSK3 beta has a natural inhibitor. The natural inhibitor, I show here, is lithium.
Oh, fascinating.
Lithium is the only substance at low molecular levels, like 1 milligram, which is sufficient to actually stop the Alzheimer's progression. That's at least
1 milligram per what?
Per day.
Oh, per day. It's 1 milligram per day.
You need only very, very low amounts. And
but it's only present at really trace amounts in most foods, though.
Yeah, exactly. You need certain foods that have actually a milligram. And what I found is that fish, but only fish from the ocean, or mussels or whatever, fruit of the ocean, so to speak, has because the lithium content in the ocean water is 100 times higher than in fresh water.
Sure. Well, I would imagine, or even greater than that.
And that's why, and it is also, and so when people were forced in the Stone Age to migrate to the ocean because of a huge drought over 70,000 years, caused by an ice age at that time, they lived at the ocean, and it is actually the time when the brain of humans accelerated in its development. And maybe it's not only the omega-3 fatty acids from fish, or the iodine that is, of course, also higher in the ocean. I suspect that the difference is between fish from inland and fish from the ocean is essentially the lithium content.
That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, because ocean water has all the elements in it, but on the downside, there are contaminants in the ocean, such as mercury.
Yeah.
Right.
Nowadays, it's not advisable to eat too much fish. That's why you should actually eat lithium as a supplement. Can you
get lithium as a supplement?
Yeah, absolutely. The funny thing now about lithium is It's a sad funny. The sad funny about lithium is that it's an essential trace element. It was shown to be an essential trace element pretty much in every animal it was studied. For example, fruit flies, if you give them low-dose lithium, their life expectancy is about 30% higher.
Really?
Of course, if we block here GSK3, we have an act. Not only do we block the blockade of neurogenesis, we actually activate neurogenesis. Lithium was shown to activate neurogenesis. Lithium was also shown to activate the process of what we call autophagy. Autophagy.
Yes.
How do you pronounce it?
Yeah, autophagy.
Autophagy. Yeah. And also microautophagy. It was actually proposed in a paper I just read that lithium might be able to even get rid of by microphagy in the brain of spike protein.
Wow.
I mean, not
That's
lithium itself, but activating this process.
Right.
And
and of course, in processed foods, sorry to interrupt, but in processed foods, there's virtually no lithium.
No.
Because almost, I mean, the minerals have been processed out of, your typical cereals and breads and all these things.
So when I published a book on corona and corona syndrome, where I tried to help people to prevent the disease, of course, the major part was vitamin D. You need to raise your level. But I also knew from the cytokine storm, which is activated by this process, that if you block this, you can block the cytokine storm by lithium. So I told people, eat lithium, at the essential dose of 1 to 2 milligram. And in 2022, a paper came out. People with severe COVID, severe enough that they had to go to the hospital, were essentially treated, standard therapy, but they were randomized into groups, and one group got lithium. And a few days after they got lithium, the cytokine storm was done.
No kidding.
It was over.
Wow.
The time the lithium group spent in the hospital was only half of the non-lithium group. The control group spent twice as much time. And in the lithium group, nobody died. Nobody had to go to intensive care unit. And in the control group, I think about 7 or 8% died.
Well, see, that's fascinating because lithium, I mean, of course, it's a very, very light element. It's well represented in the Earth's crust. And of course, it's used for batteries now, right? I mean, lithium mining for industrial use is very widespread.
And as you can see, we need it for our mental battery.
We need it for our mental health as well. Now, aren't there a lot of natural spring waters that are naturally higher in lithium? Yeah.
If they are usually of volcanic origin.
Oh, interesting.
Then they have a higher content usually. Which also means that it might have also contaminants, of course.
Sure, yeah.
But the interesting story is, for example, 7-Up. 7-Up got his name because 7 is from the major isotope of lithium, is 7, right. The molecular mass. Right. That's where the 7 comes from. And the mood goes up when you drink it. But it was the
7-Up. Oh, like uplifting.
Uplifting, exactly.
So there used to be lithium in 7-Up?
Actually, the source, the fountain name was Lithia of 7-Up.
Oh,
but I think they're not allowed to use this water anymore because lithium is not good for the technocratic narrative introduced in our brain.
Of course, Coca-Cola used to have cocaine in it. I wonder. I mean, is 7-Up the lithium drink? Is that the gateway drug to the cocaine in Coca-Cola? And is there like a fentanyl soda now?
Yeah, I mean, some things might not actually be that bad for us. Who knows?
I can't help but joking around. But
no, it's we have to joke because it's really serious here, and joking helps a little bit to get around the issue.
Yeah.
But there was a paper. Actually, it was a press release by the University of Buffalo in North New York, and there's also a guy like me who works in Alzheimer's and Parkinson, and he also, like me, showed that lithium would be helpful because these diseases, as we can see on the slide here, are caused by neuroinflammation, and lithium can block it.
So does this also explain why lithium is sometimes prescribed to people for depression or mental health?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's almost without side effects for that cause. Because if you give something which is essential, you shouldn't expect any side effects.
Right.
The side effects only come if you go in much higher doses, like bipolar disorders, where by accident they identify that you can shut down the mood alterations by giving high doses.
Let me mention your book one more time here, and just show it on camera. The Indoctrinated Brain is the book. I mean, Dr. Nehls, this is just absolutely fascinating. And you can tell I could ask you questions for the next 10 hours, but I know you've already done many hours of interviews today. But the book is The Indoctrinated Brain. It's available at Amazon and Barnes & Noble, booksellers everywhere. There's also an audiobook version available. This is from Skyhorse Publishing. And as you can tell, if you understand the information in this book, not only will it help you navigate how you're being manipulated by global forces that want to, let's say, attack your hippocampus. Would that be a fair way to say it?
Yeah.
And then you can also protect your neurology so that you can be more resilient, you can have better mental health, better joy, better purpose in life, better creativity, all these things that matter.
Yeah, not only yourself, also your children,
yes,
your parents, your grandparents. It's for everybody around you. You need to know what helps you to protect yourself against this attack against our mental immune system.
And this, it's shocking to me how many layers of warfare there are against us right now. Mm-hmm. I mean, you presented this whole new kind of warfare that's happening in the cognitive space. Mm-hmm. And it's a type of war that's not even recognized by most people.
No, it's not. And we see only these different wars. We see the war against a pandemic, and then we see a war against climate change. Then we see a war over borders, which might be global wars eventually. At least the threat is in the air. And so we see all these different wars. But for me, all these wars are actually essentially only one war, a war against against the brain.
Wow.
Because all the fears and all the narratives point in one direction. To solve each of these problems, you need a global government. Because not a single government in the world can solve the problem.
That's the narrative.
That's the narrative. Yeah. And that's implanted in our brain. And if you give me one more minute, I can show you actually why the most fundamental discovery I've made with my book.
Oh, please.
And
go for it. Yeah.
This is shown here in this next slide. It summarizes essentially everything what we discussed and brings one highlight, which is very important to understand what I just said, the last few sentences. Okay. So we have this attack on the mental immune system, which means we have a chronic lack of index neurons. We agree on that. The consequence is we have a loss of natural curiosity, which means we are not questioning anything that's happening around us.
Right.
And we know that people stopped questioning.
They did. They stopped questioning. They just went along with everything.
So and they accepted dangerous, nonsensical orders.
Right. Like lock down your children, wear a mask all the time.
Or inject the stuff in your children if you are not endangered. You know?
It's crazy.
It's absolutely crazy. Then we have a weakened psychological resilience. We discussed it in length. But the consequence of that is you are easily controllable by anxiety.
Yep.
Then we have the low and dwindling self-esteem. The ego is shrinking.
Yes.
Because your personality is shrinking, which means you have an increased tendency to collective narcissism. You seek the group,
right?
No matter what nonsense the group is saying, but you feel more confident being with them together,
right?
Which we can use actually against this development, because we can say, well, we are the majority now. Then they will follow us immediately.
Oh, well.
Yeah, well, that's a...
But we are not the majority.
No. Well, the others were never the majority with them.
That's true.
But it doesn't matter. But we will be the majority. This is the last chapter of my book. I show people who read it how we can become the majority.
Okay, awesome.
And then we have the reduced ability to think critically because we don't have the mental energy.
Yeah.
So we are trapped in stereotypical thinking and behavior.
Right.
So that all leads to an acceptance of objectively harmful measures. And then we have all these brain-damaging life changes. We allow the spiking. And the spiking is not the end. I mean, there are at least 8 additional mRNA vaccines on the way.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and we were told it's all necessary and we will accept them under these conditions.
And we're told that the WHO will make you take those.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will accept it because all the deaths of this disease, of COVID, can only be prevented in the future in a similar situation if we give the total control to somebody else who, by for whatever reason, told us not to take vitamin D.
By the way, your European neighbor, France, as you know, has now criminalized the speech that you have been giving here today.
I know.
It's criminal. In France, you could go to jail up to 3 years for questioning the mRNA jabs.
Yeah.
That's on the books right now. So, but that's part of enforcing this whole system, isn't it?
It's fortunate when I'm flying home, actually, we are not landing in France. We are actually jumping over them.
Oh, they might arrest you.
Yeah.
If you had it.
God.
But what about in Germany? Aren't you afraid they're going to pass a law like this in Germany at some point too?
Everything is possible.
Would you have to escape?
What would you do in Germany? What would you do in the United States? Same thing.
I would not. I would stand my ground.
Yeah, exactly. That's my answer. Okay, and we can do nothing else.
You can't silence me from speaking the truth.
No.
But we have the First Amendment, and I don't believe that Germany has any equivalent.
Free speech and everything we have also. I mean, we are not such a small minority anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, the number of people who think and doing this to us is much smaller than the group of people who think, who are against it.
You are correct.
Yeah.
You are correct.
And between us is a majority still who is not willing to think, but we can make them think. We can help them to think.
That's a really good point, that it's actually, just like we've been doing here today through your presentation and your book, you are reshaping the cognitive battlefield by teaching people how the war is actually targeting them.
I mean, the book that inspired me to write this book actually was the Schwab's book, COVID and the Great Reset.
Oh, really?
And because I realized why this is all happening. And I come to this actually in this slide.
Okay, go ahead.
And
I'm sorry, I keep interrupting you.
No, it's no problem, but if you have enough time. But the point is, I had to write a counter-narrative, a humane counter-narrative, something that is the alternative to what he's proposing. And if this proposal is useful for people, it might prevail.
Okay.
So anyway, what we're having here is now a vicious cycle of indoctrination. But the indoctrination process is not stopped here. The idea that I had, and I come back to the beginning when I told you when I walked down these steps in the Cross Island in this house that we rented. The idea that I had is what happens actually if you have no index neurons like I show here, and you still have to remember all these narratives. What will happen to your brain? And as I show here, what will happen is, and I mentioned it already, you have an overriding of the remaining index neurons with the fear narratives.
That's the hack.
That's the hack.
Wow.
You override it. You essentially put in a new operating system,
exactly.
Erase the previous one. Our culture is pretty much erased. Our individuality will be erased. And the consequence of that is you will lose individuality, and the technocratic narrative, whatever it is, becomes a defining part of your personality.
Do you think it's a coincidence then that right now Google's AI system is erasing all white people from history? The memory of human history.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that a metaphor for what you're talking about?
It's identical. It happens in the outside world and happens in the inside world here in our brains.
I mean, a generation from now, people could live in a world where they think that there were no white people in history.
White people? Yeah, really?
I mean, whatever, quote, white people means.
Okay.
It's a loosey-goosey definition.
But censorship is a big thing, and the European Union just stated that the hugest pandemic we have is misinformation. What they actually mean is what we are talking here about. This is misinformation.
They claim that, yeah.
Yeah, they claim that.
Right.
And their biggest fear is that our information interferes with their idea to reprogram humans.
Right. Exactly. So, perfectly stated.
So anyway, we have this loss of individuality, and what this leads to is a culture-damaging life change. We accept the global technocratic dictatorship in such a situation, and the installation, what I call an AI-controlled social operating system.
And we all know people who worship that at the same time.
Yeah.
They will worship their jailers.
It's their way out.
Obedience to the system that's destroying them.
Yeah, but it's their way out, and we have to make sure that they understand what's going on, and I think we have still time, but the time is running out. We have to be quick.
Wow. What if we could like secretly drop lithium into the water supply?
Yeah, that's one of the reasons I pushed lithium. I want to write a book about this. The title might be Lithium for Life.
Yeah.
But and I'm going to write this book because it has many other aspects besides this one here. It's worth writing a book about it. But I actually decided for myself, the most important chapter maybe for the time being is how lithium can interfere with this process. So I put this on my Substack, on my website, and everybody can access it.
Okay.
So we can add all the
What's your website again?
It's michaelnehls.com.
Oh, okay.
Michael-nehls.com.
Michael-Nehls,
But you
N-E-H-L-S.
find me also on Twitter and X,
Yeah.
Just Nehls, Nehls, MD.
Yes.
Nehls, MD. And of course, I have a Substack, but you can find that by all these ways. And yeah, you find all the information on lithium. And it was very important for me to put this out because doctors in Germany have to prescribe the essential dose. Because it's not allowed to put it in as a supplement out.
Well, we see that across the European Union, this war on supplements. It's crazy.
It's totally crazy.
Even on vitamin C.
Yeah, absolutely. Vitamin D, they would love to. The New England Journal told us in 2020 on a paper that was crazy. We could spend half an hour just talking about the craziness of this paper. It's totally absurd. But the result of this paper was that the editors of the journal made what they called a decisive verdict on vitamin D. And in this decisive verdict in vitamin D, that's the New England Journal of Medicine, saying that humans with deficit of vitamin D don't need vitamin D.
That's crazy.
You should stop taking vitamin D. Doctors should stop measuring vitamin D. And,
wow.
And people should stop wasting money investing in this supplement.
That is so disastrously damaging to humanity.
Yeah. So humankind has made an evolutionary step. We are an essential vitamin, which is essentially required to produce an essential hormone. It's not essential anymore.
Well,
but in order to survive, we need the yearly jab.
Right. But I mean, we live in a world of imaginary biology. I wouldn't be surprised soon the New England Journal of Medicine says men can have babies.
Yeah, it's maybe even possible. Arnold Schwarzenegger showed it, didn't he?
I probably.
Yeah, I did. There was a movie he showed it.
But it's imaginary biology that they're pushing, and then they accuse us of having misinformation. I mean, how crazy is that? Okay, a couple other things before we wrap this up. And by the way, I'm very honored that you stopped by here because, I mean, you traveled all the way from Germany to come to the States, and you've been on several different shows, and I'm really honored that you would come to our studio and share this time with us. I know you're probably exhausted. You've done a lot today already. But I just want to mention, when you're talking about lithium, it reminds me of orthosilicic acid, or OSA, which helps the body. Oh, and this is a substance that's naturally found in Fiji water, by the way. But you can also get orthosilicic acid, I believe, as a supplement. But it binds with aluminum in the blood, forming a much larger molecular compound, aluminosilicates, I believe, that then the kidneys can eliminate, and it reduces aluminum concentration in the blood. I had thought that high aluminum concentrations were also associated with neuroinflammation.
It does.
Okay.
It does. This is why, for example, all the injections children become when they are in the first year, second year, third year, even to get permission to go to school, they had to get certain jabs. All these vaccines contain certain quantities of aluminum.
As adjuvants.
Yeah, this is not good.
Yes.
It's not good.
Is it possible then that the aluminum could provoke even more degeneration of neurology in the absence of lithium or vitamin D?
Yeah, I mean, there are essentially effects which counter each other. So aluminum activates the inflammation,
yes.
Lithium blocks it.
Yes.
So without lithium and only aluminum, it's really worse than having both. Right. Actually, I use alpha-liponic acid to get rid of the aluminum.
Was that right?
Yeah.
Alpha lipoic acid, ALA.
Yeah. It's used also if you have an accident, for example, with mercury or something in the industry, then you get large quantities of alpha lipoic acid.
No kidding.
And it's a natural compound actually produced by the body, but you can increase it.
Yes.
And I think it's the most natural way to get rid of heavy metals and also of aluminum.
Well, that's really interesting. Okay. I'll have to check that out because I'm always interested in detox from toxic elements.
Actually, if you read my paper, the Unified Theory of Alzheimer's Disease, it's part of the program.
Oh. I would love to read that paper. Can you send us that link, perhaps?
No problem.
My producer?
No problem at all.
Okay, I'd like to cover that.
Yeah, no problem at all. But you find also on my website all articles on Alzheimer's, and you will find prominently my papers.
Oh, okay. Well, then that's what we'll do. Okay. Is it okay? I'd like to ask your permission. Can the AI language model system that we are training, can I train it on your papers? It would influence the model. It wouldn't copy your papers.
No, I have no problem with that.
Okay. I would love to do that because we have many other scientists and researchers like Dr. Judy Mikovits. Her books are going, they're going to be used to train our model. And our model will have a lot of knowledge about nutrition and elements and detoxification and so on. So we can add your
use
papers.
My lithium article and whatever I have.
I would love to.
Yeah.
And that way when people queried about lithium, the answers would tend to reflect some of your work.
That would be nice because, to be honest, ChatGPT or whatever it's called.
Oh, yeah.
I was told by my son-in-law, who is a medical doctor, and he said he's using it for his research.
Oh.
And so I said, well, send me a link. And I got his link, and I put all the keywords I had in my mind working on lithium and this process here that I just described. And I hope that something comes out because the world knowledge is there. I can tell you there was nothing that was of any value that I could use.
No. All the chat GPT systems or the AI systems produced by those corporations, they follow the same narrative control as their platforms.
Okay, that makes sense.
We are actually producing the first model rooted in natural medicine and nutrition.
Okay, perfect. Then I'm more than happy that you use my articles.
Okay. Yeah, we've spent like $600,000 on this project so far.
Okay.
And it's going to be
keep me
it's
posted.
going to be a resource for research that people can use.
Perfect.
Yeah.
So if I get access to it, that would be very nice.
You'll be able to download it for free and run it on your own local computer. Maybe not the laptop. You need 16 gigs of RAM.
I have a bigger one at home.
Yeah, you run on the bigger one. Yeah. So, okay.
Sure.
Well,
That's nice.
We're all doing our part to help spread knowledge and information to empower humanity.
I mean, my book would be worthless without people like you, to be honest.
But we're on Team Humanity together.
Yeah, absolutely.
My show would be worthless without people like you.
So
no one wants to just sit here and watch me solve the Rubik's Cube or whatever. It's boring. It's you here. Yeah,
Thank you
absolutely.
very much.
Thank you, Dr. Nehls.
It was a pleasure.
Pleasure to have you here today.
It was a pleasure on my side.
All right. Well, folks, there you go. Dr. Michael Nehls, his website is michael-nehls, nehls.com. And, of course, his book is called The Indoctrinated Brain, and it's available everywhere right now. Definitely check this out. And I interviewed Dr. Nehls a few months back. You can also check out that interview on brighteon.com. As always, feel free to repost this interview on other platforms and channels. And remember, folks, protect your hippocampus. If you want to go back to campus for an education, go back to your hippocampus. That's better than a woke college campus right now. It's the hippocampus. Sorry, I can't help with the word games. That's just
no, it's nice.
Thanks for watching today. I'm Mike Adams. Appreciate you. Take care, and feel free to share this and post it everywhere. God bless you all. Take care. I want to show you what we have put together here in terms of our really popular, now wheat-free, certified organic, lab-tested macaroni and cheese meal mixes. I've got them on my desk here. The way we sell them, it's in a mini bucket format. You see the bottom ones there. And inside each bucket are 3 of these packs right here, which is, vacuum packed. It's nitrogen flooded and then vacuumed in a very rugged, long-term, stable bag. This is wheat-free. It's made out of amaranth as well as quinoa. And so this holds its shape and texture and tastes really great. It's not like gritty and mushy like whole wheat macaroni tends to be. So we have this, and then this is a cheese pack that's also very durable, rugged packing. And this, no garbage, no artificial colors, no fillers, nothing like that. And in the cheese pack are very simple certified organic ingredients. Check it out. Organic white cheddar powder, organic heavy cream powder, organic butter powder, organic whey protein powder, organic onion powder, and organic black pepper powder. And that's it, folks. There's no fillers, no artificial flavors, no artificial colors. I mean, no colors of any kind actually in it. And it's very easy to make. It's extremely delicious. Now, it does not have any salt added. We did that on purpose because we wanted people to be able to salt it according to your own taste. So for those having a low sodium diet, you can easily incorporate this. I mean, check the nutrition facts label. It still does have sodium naturally in the cheese, but we did not add any salt. So it can be incorporated into a low sodium diet if that's something that you're paying attention to. For the rest of us, I add salt to this, by the way, and I don't normally add salt to anything, but this is so low in the salt because we didn't add any salt to the recipe that I think you actually have to add a little bit of salt to bring out the flavor and make it taste really delicious. And then it does when you add a little bit of salt to it. So this is, all you got to do is boil water. You boil the elbows for 5 to 10 minutes, and then you add in the cheese powder, you stir it in, you're done. And it's super delicious. This is a really great preparedness meal. I think you'll really love this. We also have, this is very popular. It is an organic banana, peanut butter, and chocolate instant superfood shake. Now, this product, which is available in various quantities, if you go to our store, you can just buy one canister, or you can buy them in groups. This also is very delicious, but very simple. Look at the ingredients. Organic whey protein powder, banana powder, also organic, peanut butter powder, cocoa powder, coconut sugar, which is a low glycemic sweetener. And that's it, folks. It's all organic. It's laboratory certified. It's super delicious. It blends with water or other kinds of milks. It could be a nut milk or cow's milk or whatever you want. It's delicious, hot or cold. And it's incredibly nutritious and very clean because we do all the testing. So these are two relatively new products, well, brand new actually, that are in stock right now, at least at the moment, and will probably be sold out of them pretty quickly, but we'll make more. It just takes time to source all these ingredients. It took us many months to get the cheddar cheese powder and the organic cream powder, the butter powder, and the whey. I mean, frankly, all the animal products are taking a very long time to get sourced right now, but we're doing the best we can. We have these available, super delicious. And this is just the first of many kind of instant meals that we're formulating right now. So macaroni and cheese is one of many that we'll have soon. We're going to have different kind of soups, like a lentil soup and also an organic chili product. And they're all going to be based on the same kind of philosophy. Clean, simple, lab-tested ingredients with no artificial anything whatsoever, and also very lower sodium compared to what's typically out there. Because I don't know about you, but I don't want to just eat a bunch of salt and MSG. That's what a lot of storable food is, just a bunch of salt and sugar and MSG and textured vegetable protein garbage. And we're not into that, not at all. This is real food, real nutrition, real taste, and it's available right now at healthrangerstore.com. Just go there. You can search for peanut butter to find our chocolate banana peanut butter shake, or if you want the macaroni and cheese, just go to healthrangerstore.com and search for the organic wheat-free macaroni and cheese with no salt added. Or check out our hundreds of other products, such as, like, you can look at herbs right here, all these different categories, different herbs and tinctures. We have garden seeds. We have superfoods. We have personal care products. Here we have organic turmeric gold extract. We have the knives, the Dawson knives. I've co-designed these with Dawson knives. You probably heard about these. This is under preparedness, survival gear. We've got, well, let me just show you. We've got all the different knives right here made of the corrosion-resistant Magna Cut alloy. Mass ratio is one, very popular. That's back in stock now. Consequences covert knife. and more. We've got other knives available, including Escape from LA. Hey, I wonder, is that sold out? Hard to keep in stock. But check it all out at healthrangerstore.com. This is how you can support us, and then we give back to you in a multitude of ways, with knowledge, with empowerment, with the large language model we're going to be giving away here soon, coming up end of March, with all the interviews and all the things that we do. Plus, we just made a $100,000 donation to Convoy of Hope of non-GMO vitamin C. So when we are able to, we buy an extra large batch of raw materials, and then we use our in-house manufacturing and testing, and we will overproduce certain batches, knowing that we can use Convoy of Hope to distribute them to people in need. And that it's a Christian-based ministry that distributes food and supplements. And we've worked with them several times now. And just the other day, $100,000 worth of vitamin C. So that's going out into the hands of people in need across America. Sometimes they distribute to other nations, but they focus on the United States of America. And we will continue to support people in need anywhere that we can. Remember that our slogan is the Health Ranger Store, healing the world with clean food. That's our philosophy. That's what we practice. That's what we preach. That's what we do. We do the lab testing. We manufacture clean, simple ingredients that are authentic and pure and tasty. It's like nothing else that you've ever seen in the processed food industry or the processed storable food industry. And a lot of the survival food out there is just heavily processed garbage. I'm sorry to say, that's just honest truth of what it is. You want real food? Come to healthrangerstore.com. Thank you for your support. I'm Mike Adams, the founder of Brighttown.com and the Health Ranger Store. Take care. A global reset is coming, and that's why I've recorded a new 9-hour audiobook. It's called The Global Reset Survival Guide. You can download it for free by subscribing to the naturalnews.com email newsletter, which is also free. I'll describe how the monetary system fails. I also cover emergency medicine and first aid and what to buy to help you avoid infections. So download this guide. It's free. It's my gift to you simply because I want like-minded people to survive.